I want to take this corner of my house and turn it into a coffee bar, and I'm using my Cricut to take inexpensive items and make them look more high-end. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Jess, and I like to make home decor on a budget. And if you do too, then let's get started. Cricut is a smart cutting machine that can cut a variety of materials such as vinyl, leather, cardstock, and more. Cricut comes with a free software program called Design Space. This is where you can browse hundreds of images and fonts to create and personalize your projects. Once you've created your project, Design Space sends it to your Cricut to be cut. I really wanted a nice coordinated set of canisters for on my coffee bar, so I bought 3 different jars in 2 different sizes, and I used my Cricut to create the labels. I first started by going into Cricut Design Space, and I measured my canisters to get an idea of how big I wanted my labels. So I clicked on shape, and you can see here that you can adjust the size. And I knew I wanted mine to stay within a 3.5 by 3.5 inch square. So after I created my square, I just gave it a lighter color so that I would be able to see it better once I got my image that I wanted as my label. And the square is going to be deleted later. It's just a guide so you know what size you need. Then I went under images and I searched for cute pantry labels, and this little teacup popped up. And the great thing about Design Space is when you find something you like, if you click on the 3 dots in the corner, it'll show you if there's a whole set of images that are coordinated together. So once I went under the whole image set, I saw that the 3 labels I needed were all on here: the tea, the coffee, and the sugar. So I added the teacup to my canvas first, and I was able to size it by dragging on the bottom right hand corner, the little arrows there. That'll help you size it. And once it fit inside of my square, I knew I had the right size for my canister. So you can see there that square was just a guide. It's not something that I'm going to use. Now that I have my size and my label, I can move my square over and go back into images and select the next one and do the same thing. Hit add to canvas and then move it so that it is inside of your square and size it to how you need it. And this is great because you have that square as a guide. Then you know that your 3 labels are all going to be sized the same, and they'll look more cohesive once they're on the canisters. After I had my project saved, I opened up my Design Space on my cell phone because my desktop stays downstairs and my Cricut's upstairs, so it's easier to send projects from my phone. And I'm able to go under my projects and click the ones I want. This time I'm using no mat because I'm using the smart vinyl to cut out these labels for the Cricut. And all that means is that the vinyl doesn't require you to put it on a mat. You can load it right into the machine. I connected my maker to the Design Space, and then once I selected that it was smart vinyl, it sent it to my machine to get cut. Once my Cricut recognized that a project was being sent to it, it flashed the little arrow button, and that told me that it was time to load my vinyl. So I just had to push that and it loaded my vinyl into it. Then once it was ready, it flashed the little play button and I pushed that, and then that's when it started cutting out my design. Once my labels were all cut out on my Cricut, then I was able to start weeding off the excess vinyl. And all that means is that you have to remove the background vinyl out of your image. And if you ever get confused as to what you need to remove and what you don't, just refer back to the original image and it'll help you understand which parts you need to pull off of your design. Now I just needed to take a piece of the Cricut transfer tape and place it over top of my label, and then I use my little squeegee tool to lift the image up off of the backing onto the transfer tape, and then I'm able to put it on my canister. Now I did wash these canisters first, and before I stuck the labels on, I rubbed the surface with a little rubbing alcohol just to make sure there was no debris left on there. And what I recommend with the vinyl when you're putting it on something like a canister or a mug is you want to make sure that you only hand wash this. Don't put these in the dishwasher. And I always like to dry mine right away just to make sure that there's no water sitting on the vinyl. Another tip I have is when you're removing the transfer tape, just make sure that you're not pulling it straight up because you run the risk of actually pulling off your image. Try to keep it pretty parallel with whatever surface you have it setting on. I wanted to create some cute little pieces of artwork that would fit on my coffee bar, but that also could serve a purpose. So I found some of these wooden trays at the Dollar Tree, and I mixed up a stain color that I liked. I just mixed a little of the truffle color paint with the antique wax by Waverly, and I gave each of my trays one coat of that mixture. This time when I went into Design Space under Images, I just searched for coffee, and it gave me a lot of results, and I was able to find some sayings and phrases that I really liked. And again, they were part of an image set, so I just picked a few out that I like and sized them to fit my trays. And this time I decided to cut them out on some white permanent vinyl. I applied the Cricut transfer tape to these decals, and then I was able to place them on the back side of my trays. I needed some artwork for on the wall that was next to my coffee bar, so I decided to use some heat transfer vinyl to make some reverse canvases. I started with two different size canvases. I had two 8x8s on hand and another one that was 9x12. To get started, I just needed to remove the canvas from the frame, so I used a mini screwdriver to pry up the staples, and then I used a pair of pliers to pull all of the staples out of the canvas. This way I was able to remove the canvas right from the frame and save as much of the material as I could so that I could use the back side of the canvas to iron onto. Since the frames are wood, you could paint or stain them any color you like, but I decided to paint mine with the ink color by Waverly, and because this paint is so pigmented, I only needed one coat to get a full coverage. When you're using the iron-on vinyl, the biggest thing you have to remember after you create your project in Design Space, when you send it to your machine to cut, there's a little toggle switch that says mirror, and that is for the iron-on, and you have to make sure that you switch that toggle over so that it will mirror your image, and it cuts it out backwards so that when you iron it on, it's correct. Another thing you have to remember with the iron-on is that when you load it into the machine to cut, there's a shiny side and a matte side, and you want to make sure that the matte side is facing up. Weeding out the iron-on is the same as the permanent vinyl. You just have to make sure that you remove the background. And if you ever get confused, like I said, it always helps to have the image on hand so that you can see which parts you actually have to remove. The great thing about the iron-on is that you don't have to use the transfer tape. The clear backing that's on it is what's going to help you press it onto your material. I'll be using my Cricut Easy Press 2 to iron on my image, and the Cricut website actually has a guide to help you so that you know what temperature you need to set your press at and how long you need to hold it on. The heat guide is really easy to use. You first just pick what type of transfer material you're using, and then in the second drop down box you select your base material. In this case it's going to be the cotton canvas. And then once you click apply, the guide will tell you what temperature you need to set your Easy Press at and how long you need to press it. To transfer my image to the canvas, I laid the canvas down on my mat and then laid my Easy Press over top of it. And I already had it set to 340 degrees and 30 seconds, which is what the heat guide recommended. And the important thing is to remember you don't want to move the Easy Press around. You just want to hold it in place until the timer lets you know that it's finished. The heat guide also recommended that I press it for 15 seconds on the back side of my piece. Another thing to remember is that the plastic backer on the iron-on is really hot when you're done pressing it, so just be aware of that so that you don't handle it too quickly after you're finished. To reassemble the canvases, I just ran a bead of hot glue along the back side of the wood frame, and I centered it over the image and pressed it onto the canvas. After the glue had set, then I just cut off the excess material and my piece of wall art was finished. Of course, no coffee bar is complete without a few fun mugs, so I found a phrase in Design Space that I liked and I cut it out on some permanent vinyl. I took my time weeding out the letters because they are a little smaller, so I wanted to make sure that I accidentally didn't pull one of the letters up or rip it as I was trying to pull off the excess vinyl. Once I had my phrase all weeded out, then I did the same technique as I did on the canisters. I used a piece of the Cricut transfer tape and I laid it over my phrase, and then I used my Cricut scraper to burnish it down so that it would stick to the transfer tape, and then I was able to transfer it to my coffee mug. I think this would also make a really great gift for someone. You could cut their name out or their initials or a funny phrase that you both like, and I think a personalized coffee mug would be a really special gift. Wood bead garlands are such a popular trend right now for decorating, and I wanted to create a personalized tag for the end of my wood bead garland. Back in Cricut Design Space, I clicked on images and I searched for coffee cup, and I started scrolling down through. I wanted just a basic shape of a coffee cup. I didn't want too much detail on mine because I knew it was just going to be a tag for the end of my wood bead garland. Once I found the coffee cup that I liked, I selected it and I clicked Add to Canvas, and it placed it within my canvas. Then I just had to unlock the little lock that's on the bottom left-hand corner, and I was able to drag the arrows around until it was the right size that I wanted for my tag. Then I went to the top of the screen and I clicked flip, and I selected flip horizontal because I wanted the handle for my mug to be on the left-hand side. I wanted to personalize this mug just a bit, so I went back under images and I just typed in the letter M, and I searched for a fancy letter M that I would like because my last name starts with an M, so I wanted this to be something personal for on my coffee bar. So again, I just scrolled down through until I found the M that I liked in the style. And I picked something pretty simple also. I didn't want anything too fancy with too much detail. And then I was able to select it and click Add to Canvas once again. I changed the color of my M to a lighter color just so it would be easier for me to see. And again, I had to size it down a little so that it would fit well within the mug. So I placed it over the mug, and that's why I wanted it a different color so I could see it better on that black background. Once I liked the size of the M, I was able to take my mouse around the outside of both of the pieces and just pull down until I had a square around both of them. And then once they were grouped together like that, I was able to go down into the bottom right hand corner and select the slice button. And you can see here, once I hit slice, it's actually just sliced the M right out of the center of the coffee cup. So I got rid of the other two M's. I knew I wouldn't need those. And I am cutting this out on cardstock, and I wanted it to be thicker. So I went over to the right hand side and I hit duplicate about 6 times. I think I cut 7 of these out altogether. And then that way I could just layer them on top of each other once they were already cut and glue them together to make a thicker tag. Since I am using cardstock for this project, I laid my cardstock onto the standard grip mat for Cricut, and everything else was the same. I sent it to the Cricut to be cut, and then it told me when it was ready, and I just had to hit the play button and it started cutting. Once all of my coffee cups were cut out on the cardstock, then I was able to start gluing them together. And this is what I meant by creating a thicker tag, because this cardstock on its own is a little flimsy, but when you layer several pieces of it together, it becomes really sturdy, like a nice chipboard tag. And I'm using the art glitter glue. This is just what I prefer for paper, but you could use any type of adhesive that you like. And while I'm gluing these together, I'll just mention that all of the Cricut products that I'm using will be linked in the description box below. So if you're interested in any of those, make sure you hit that description box and check out what I used in today's video. I strung together some black wooden beads, and then when it was the length that I liked, I just tied it onto the coffee cup. And I created a little bow out of some black and white gingham ribbon, and I glued that onto the handle for a little extra embellishment. I love how this space turned out so much. This coffee bar came together so nicely, and I love how everything is so coordinated thanks to the images that I could find in Cricut Design Space. And thank you again to Cricut for sponsoring today's video. Make sure you check out the description box so you can click on the links and it'll take you to all the products that I used today. Thank you everybody for hanging out in the craft room with me today. I hope you liked all these projects. If you did, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you in the next one.